Dr. Fauci says lockdowns are not coming back. Simone Biles will compete in Tokyo after all. And bacon may be about to disappear from the menu in California. Monday Need to Know. Let's go. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need to Know podcast for Monday, August 2nd. I'm Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Good morning, Carlo.
Good morning, Jill. How was your weekend?
My weekend was very good. I see you're now in the East End Bureau. Is that what's going on?
Yes, I've traded Brooklyn for your sort of neck of the woods here in Long Island for the next couple of weeks, where we're out with the fam and the in-laws and the baby. So far, so good out here.
All right, let's talk a little COVID. Dr. Fauci warning over the weekend that things are going to get worse in this current Delta wave. But he said he didn't think the country would go back into lockdowns, given that enough people are vaccinated. So this will help avoid a repeat of last winter. Fauci again urging the roughly 100 million unvaccinated eligible Americans to get their shots. Of the 164 million vaccinated Americans, new data compiled by NBC shows that less than 0.1% have tested positive for COVID, 0.001% have died, 0.004% were hospitalized, 3/4 of them were elderly. Meanwhile, a day after Florida broke its record for new cases, the Sunshine State has now also been broken its hospitalization record set more than a year ago. That was a month before vaccines were readily available. We talked about this on Friday when I read that op-ed. You're basically, if you're vaccinated, more likely to die of a lightning strike at this point than you are of COVID.
Yeah, Jill, breaking records for an infectious disease, I think when vaccines are available for that infectious disease, sort of beyond embarrassing at this point, but we knew that already. That story that we were talking about on Friday, just about the CDC numbers, that leaked document that caused the CDC to revise their mask guidance, it got really bastardized in the media from what I saw over the weekend. I think it's really sort of incredible how bad we are in this business sometimes putting things into context, because it seemed like what happened is people started saying that Delta is spreading among vaccinated people at the same rate as it is among unvaccinated people. That's not true. That's not true by a long shot. What we were saying on Friday, which is true, is that in the rare case that you do get a breakthrough infection, you then may be spreading it at that same rate as if you were unvaccinated, just because, as you said, right, that there's so much virus in your nose. But still, even you're not getting very sick. That's the crux of it, which just makes the risk calculus change for some folks.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Brian Stelter on Reliable Sources, he was talking about media coverage of Delta this weekend. So the problem, as you were mentioning, with this leaked info about the Delta variant, it's left Americans confused and frustrated, fueling media overreaction and political manipulation, according to Axios. So they say it's basically this combination of a communications failure by the CDC and other agencies, and then news outlets that have sensational headlines and faulty frames that have compounded the problem. Reason Magazine, their senior editor, saying that the recent news coverage has been utterly shamefully hyperbolic and fear-mongering, scaring people unnecessarily, and that's because the vaccines, as you mentioned, are extremely effective. And I just wanted to read this thread from an Arkansas ER doctor. He said, she says, "I am an Arkansas ER physician. We're at the point that we warned about a year ago. There are no ICU beds in the state. 4 days ago, we called 5 surrounding states looking for ICU beds and were unsuccessful. In simple terms, because the critical care beds are full of sick COVID patients who tend to have a slow recovery, there are no beds for the heart attacks, the major traumas, the septic patients. I could go on all day." A few facts. The average Delta variant positive person infects 6 people compared to less than 3 with the original variant. I thought that was pretty interesting. Almost all of the ill pneumonia patients that we're seeing are unvaccinated. Yes, vaccinated people can get COVID, but they have mostly milder symptoms. She says, your friend from high school who's done all the research and knows the truth about the vaccine hasn't and doesn't. I have 2 degrees and 30 years of experience in medicine, and I usually have to read these articles several times to make sure that I understand them. Appendum, I have nothing to promote but getting the vaccine. Also, we've cared for every patient who arrived at our doors. It's been inspiring to see the medical and nursing staff, administration, and all the ancillary services make this happen. What's his? I mean, it's just as simple as that. I think that that's right. It's like that person who's like, I know science and blah blah blah. It's like everyone who really understands science, the doctors, are the first to line up to get the vaccine. And we are in a place right now that we just really didn't have to be. The good news, I guess, is that vaccines are somewhat ticking up. We're at about 700,000 a day. Mm-hmm. But we're at 100,000 new cases a day of COVID, primarily among unvaccinated. It's totally unnecessary. Walmart and Disney have announced vaccine mandates for their employees. That was Friday, following similar mandates from Facebook, Google, Uber, and others. Walmart's policy has one glaring hole, a big one. It doesn't cover store or warehouse workers, and that they're who make up the vast majority of the company's 1.6 million strong workforce. Similarly, Disney's mandate doesn't cover union workers, who make up about a fifth of its employee base. Carlo, I just want to mention, we're hearing in nursing homes, there are these breakthrough cases. Nursing homes, like these are the people who are the most vulnerable, in part because there are some nursing homes where 40%, 50% of staff aren't vaccinated. So it's like if
that makes no sense to me.
It's crazy. And then I've heard interviews with family members of people in nursing homes, and they're like, what are they're going to shut down again? No one's going to be able to go in except for the healthcare workers who aren't vaccinated. It's just wild.
It's like it's too much. You know, with Walmart, it's very hard, I think, to do vaccine mandates for retail workers. I think just given how much turnover there is and how competitive that labor pool is right now, which is a shame because, I mean, Walmart could get 1 million people vaccinated tomorrow if they just made their store employees do it. As for Disney, I mean, I'm a union man, but the unions, public and private, have really got to come to Jesus on this now. I mean, it's not a civil rights infringement to require a vaccine at a job in which you interact with people. It just isn't. We do it all the time. We have done it in the past. I really don't get why this is suddenly just such a big thing, such a big controversy.
All right, let's go to Tokyo. A lot to get to about the Olympics here. There is a new fastest man in the world. Marcel Jacobs of Italy shocked the track and field world by running the 100-meter dash in 9.8 seconds to take gold in the event that was previously dominated by Usain Bolt, who is now retired. On the women's side, Jamaica swept the 100-meter with Elaine Thompson-Harris, setting a new Olympic record of 10.61 seconds. In the pool, Americans Caleb Dressel and Bobby Fink won gold again. The fifth for Dressel, who's now one of just 4 people to win 5 gold medals in a single Olympics for the U.S.
Also, some spoilers here. So if you're looking forward to watching NBC primetime coverage tonight, stop listening for the next minute or so. With that said, while you were sleeping, the U.S. men's soccer team beat Mexico on a dramatic extra time goal. They will take gold. Not so much on the women's side. The women just lost to Canada in the semis this morning, so they will have to settle for an appearance in the bronze match, which is a shame. But still, bronze is better than no bronze, right? Third place is better than fourth place. We are now past the halfway point of these Olympics, and maybe they're salvageable after all. I saw there was a story on NPR this morning about how people in Tokyo were sort of finally starting to embrace the games a little bit. A little bit, something.
That may be the case. The ratings, though, not getting much better. Nielsen data shows a decline as much as 50% from the 2016 games in Rio. NBC did get a big break overnight, though. Simone Biles planning to compete in the balance beam final tomorrow. It is her last possible event in Tokyo. Biles had been training at a local gym since she backed out of competition last week over mental health concerns. She later explained that she's dealing with a severe case of the twisties. It's a kind of mental block that gymnasts get in which they lose the sense of where they are in the air. We talked about it on Friday. And anybody who's a gymnast, I was actually talking to my daughter's gymnastics teacher about it, and she's like, yep, totally get it. They just kind of understand what that means, and it's quite dangerous.
It's almost like, and I don't mean to sort of knock mental health struggles as like a broader topic, because obviously, that's a real concern. But I think that by saying that she was backing out for mental health reasons, it sort of obfuscated what actually happened, which we talked about, right? And it made it seem like she couldn't handle the of being at the Olympics. But as we said, this was something different, right? If you can't actually, if your body cannot twist, then as a gymnast, you have to back out. It's just too dangerous to compete otherwise, right? Anyway, Team USA in gymnastics, they're going to put up Biles as well as Suni Lee in the balance beam final. So we got two potentials going for gold there. And their teammate, Michaela Skinner, she took silver in the vault final after she was tapped to replace Biles in that competition. She's got a great story. She thought she was going home from Tokyo. Michaela Skinner is the only member of the team to leave empty-handed. She was like on her way to the airport to fly back to Arizona. They called her back for the vault when Biles backed out, and she came in second. Amazing.
No way. Wow.
Also,
I didn't know that
very
backstory.
cool.
Wow.
Yeah, and also Jade Carey won gold in the floor exercise this morning. So women continuing to dominate.
Nice. Good to hear. Okay, overseas, U.S. and British intelligence now believe Iran was behind a drone attack on an oil tanker in the Persian Gulf last week that killed 2 people on board. The Japanese-owned tanker managed by a maritime company owned by an Israeli. It's thought to be the first fatal attack on a commercial shipping boat in the region, where tensions have been escalating since the Iran nuclear deal fell apart.
We were talking about this recently with something else, I think, this idea of like drones as this new type of warfare. In this case, sort of drones as kamikazes, right? Basically, they strap a bomb to this thing and you aim it at your target. They're so fast and they're so small that there's not really much you can do about it, especially if you're on a defenseless oil tanker. It's scary stuff. It really is. And this seems to be something specifically that Iran is doing a lot of. They did it on they did a drone attack on a Saudi oil field maybe a year or two ago that caused a lot of disruption.
DaBaby was pulled from Lollapalooza's final night lineup at the last minute. The rap star is still embroiled in controversy over recent homophobic remarks that he had made at one of his concerts. DaBaby, who had the #1 song last summer, he's also featured on Dua Lipa's recent hit Levitating, made really offensive comments about men living with HIV and AIDS. It was about a week ago. It went viral, and then he apologized. I was curious what he said, and I Googled it and listened, and it was like horrifying. It was just one of those
gross
things where you're like, what? Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, homophobia in rap music, nothing new, although it does seem like that's something that has gotten better in past years, and this seemed like a real throwback to sort of another time. Many musicians, including Dua Lipa and Elton John, condemned what he had to say. Lollapalooza, by the way, was sort of a success, if this was the biggest controversy that came out of it, having to pull DaBaby from the lineup. They did, this was like one of the first big outdoor events since COVID. They did in Chicago and Grant Park over the weekend. They did a proof of vaccination or a negative test to get in. They made people wear masks in the indoor areas at Lolla. So I think we can have these nice things. We just have to be smart about it, right?
Look, one of the things that struck me is just also the irony that Dua Lipa is condemning those remarks. By the way, as she should. But she is one of the biggest purveyors of misinformation and revisionist history when it comes to the Israel-Palestine conflict. She's been sharing posts on social media that genuinely fuel anti-Semitism and make life for Jewish people less safe. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I mean, it's one thing to be pro-Palestinian, which is great. You could be pro-Palestinian, you could be pro-Palestinian and pro-Israeli at the same time. But the words that she uses and just a complete misrepresentation of the history has been part of the problem that we're seeing in the rise in anti-Semitism right now. Just wanted to get that out there because it's been really frustrating to watch. Finally, in a few months, it could get very hard to find bacon in California. The country's most populous state is preparing to enforce an animal welfare proposition that was passed in 2018, calling for more humane treatment of farm animals like chickens, calves, and pigs. Egg and veal producers say they can meet the new requirements, but just 4% of hog producers are in compliance unless the courts intervene. So this means California could lose nearly its entire pork supply come January.
It's if even half of that pork supply went online, you'd see bacon prices go up 60% in the state. That's at least according to one study of this issue. I support the idea here, right? I don't have there's no love lost for factory farming. I don't think anybody does. It's one of the grossest things we do. Sort of. It's something our grandkids will probably talk about. Something that they found enlightenment on, I assume. But this is sort of a problem with California's government by ballot initiative thing that they do there. A couple states do it, but California is really the one that does it the most with the propositions. And we're going to see it again with this Gavin Newsom recall. By the way, these things have unintended consequences. There's a reason why politicians are elected to make laws. It's not perfect, but it's sort of better than this alternative, at least in my opinion, because you go out there like, oh yeah, I support this ballot initiative to make to support animal welfare. That makes me feel good about myself. And then they pass it, and it's like, okay, well now there's no more pork, and if there is pork, it's going to go up 60%.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's the law of unintended consequences. I do want to quickly mention, Carlo, your audio has not been great. We're going to try and fix it for tomorrow. But just for everyone who's listening, just bear with us because we still need to get the kinks out of your East End location.
Yes, thank you for that, Jill. Yep, the tech issues continue. Sorry about that, folks.
But at least you'll be breathing in the fresh East End air while we're slugging it out in the city. All right, that is what you need to know for Monday, August 2nd.